Hello, everyone, and it is great pleasure for me to welcome you to yet another BizTalk, and it is a special one because it's the first of our brand new Founders Path BizTalk, where we will dive into that founders path and try to share some knowledge with you how to start startups. And obviously, you cannot start any startup without the idea or the problem, and that is indeed the topics for today's BizTalk. And we will talk about how to find the ideas, how to validate them, and maybe figure out when to stop working on a certain ideas or how to pivot them into something else. And it is a great pleasure for me to welcome Agnieszka Lewandowska and
Hi, hello.
Dr. Łukasz Koltowski here. And as you know, I tend not to speak about the speakers too much, so I'll give them a little bit of time to introduce themselves. Agnieszka, the floor is
Hi,
yours.
hello. My name is Agnieszka Lewandowska, and I'm I would say, trainer, educator, specializing in lean startup and business models.
Łukasz, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So my name is Łukasz Koltowski, as you said. I'm a physician cardiologist. Let's say a person who tends to get some ideas and tries to put them into products, into practice. My main focus is medicine, especially digital health. Anything that is around mobile apps that bring some health benefit, as well as digital products and that are connected with some hardware products. Based in Poland, but developing solutions that are really applicable worldwide.
Thank you. Awesome. So let's dive in head first. And Łukasz, can you tell us a little bit more about the startups that you're working on? And can you tell us a little bit about how those ideas come to fruition, how you started them?
Sure. What I'm mainly focused are ways to tackle problem that is sort of growing in medicine, which is chronic disease. I mean, or different chronic diseases. We are sort of now seeing that more and more patients don't get sudden, acute kind of problem, and you have to sort it, like you break your leg or you have appendicitis, something that we would need to deal, immediately as a quick relief, and then the patient is back on his legs. Even with cancer nowadays, it's not anymore an event; it is more a chronic disease, and there are many of those. It's like hypertension, diabetes, asthma, different types of, and cancer is now also becoming sort of a chronic disease. So what I'm mainly interested in is how we can provide tools that will assist that patient over time and help the patient get guidance, diagnostic monitoring throughout this unfortunate but still a life journey. What it is for many patients, and be able to support the patient in getting back to normal life. Yeah, so that you can be a family member, a wife or a husband. You can work where you worked, or you have a job. You can be a parent for your kid. You can create stuff. You can be a scientist or any kind of intellectual worker. Different kind of stuff that makes you back in the society. The problem is that the ideal world, each of those patients would have a physician. Yeah, so that there would be a physician and a nurse and a psychologist if needed, and they will assist. The issue is that if you look at number of patients and number of physicians or number of medical professionals, those two metrics sort of tend to go completely apart. So we have more and more patients who need, and those patients live longer, expect to live longer. We have ways to have a safe cause and safe surgeries, and people don't die, but they get injured, for example, but they keep living, but they have some kind of disabilities or those chronic diseases. Whereas if you look at number of physicians per 1,000 of inhabitants, this metric is not improving at all. It's actually the other way around. It's very expensive to train a medical professional, whether it's a nurse or physiotherapist. We got more and more complicated technology, so this training process is getting longer, and eventually we are not getting that. So a sort of thing that I'm really passionate about is what digital tools and how we can use and to some extent employ our mobile phones, our smartphones, our computers, our wearables, and how we can also use data processing to assist the patient in managing the disease. So to some extent, empower the patient, to cope with the disease in the same way as the physician, as the best specialist in the world, would be advising and treating and managing and caring for this patient. So this is what I'm sort of passionate about. And if we are to be more specific, I always say that the key in digital health is to gain good data. I mean, you need to gain good quality data about your patient, about the situation he or she is, about the disease, the biomarkers around the environment the patient is currently in. So this good data are crucial to build any kind of reasoning algorithms and decision support systems. It's like when you meet a physician, whatever you tell to the physician during the visit, he will kind of process and give you advice. If what you tell him is a lie, you will get not good advice. So that's the same thing. And in medicine, we tend to admit mainly patients to the hospital because we have good devices in the hospital, high quality devices. So we do this checkup and then take a decision based on that and give a prescription, dismiss you back home, but you have a plan what to do. Now, number of hospitals are going down, kind of, if you look at per inhabitant. So the idea here is to take those big devices, professional devices, back to patient or put it to patient home, so that you get accurate data on that patient, and then use this data to advise. And there are two areas that I'm sort of looking at. One is related to very popular disease, which is bronchial asthma / chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It's a shortcut of COPD. For some people that might not tell much, but I think asthma many people know, but the other one, which is the COPD, I tell you only one thing: COPD is a disease that comes late in your life, usually when you smoke, when you're exposed to pollution and some irritants, and it's your lungs or airways that just tend to collapse and you cannot breathe normally. And the problem with this disease is this is the third killer after lung cancer and after ischemic heart disease, so heart attack, let's say. So this is number 3 in the world that kills. So it's a really big burden of that disease. And the idea here again was to start with a device. So we've developed a portable lung function assessing device. It's called the spirometer. So it's a flow measuring device, and it assesses the flow that you can generate when you exhale and flow when you exhale, and also volume of the lungs. And by this, track the changes that you experience as a patient from the comfort of your home on a very frequent basis, which is like daily or even twice daily if you need that, and compare that to your reference values. And also check on other factors like how do you feel, what medications you took, and advise you on how you should behave. Should you increase medication, decrease? Maybe you should go back to your physician for more deeper tests, but mainly to advise you on the bit how you can help yourself. And it's very interesting because quite often these are very simple kind of decisions that you have to take, but you have to take them on time when your symptoms or when this measurement is getting incorrect, and not wait until you need like calling an ambulance and rushing to the very expensive intensive care unit or emergency department. But if you intervene early, before what we call exacerbation, so a situation where this disease is getting really nasty occurs, So this is the device that we created and a system around that. So very basically, it's called AioCare. So it's a tube where you blow. It connects with a Bluetooth to your phone. You have your own personal app where you record this data. You fill in your questionnaire, and you can communicate with a care team, which is a nurse and a physician, as a secure chat system. Yeah? So this is one solution that we're developing. And the other one is related to cardiology, and this is a wearable patch, ECG patch. So ECG is electrocardiogram. So it will record your heartbeats, but not as a pulse that you can feel, but as the electrical activity of your heart. And now it's, it became very popular because, Apple Watches that tend now to have that ECG made this kind of test understood by many non-medics, let's say. The thing is that what we have in the watch is just one lead, we call it. So it's just one trace. Your heart is a 3D model, so you have to look at it from different angles, and you cannot do it just with one, as we say, lead. You need to have number of electrodes on your chest to look around the heart to understand where the electrical problem appears. I know it's very complicated, but to make it simple, what we are saying, you have to put electrodes around your chest. So we develop a solution where you put this patch and you can apply it yourself. You don't need to go to the hospital. You can put it yourself and do this test again at the comfort of your home. And I believe this product is a very early phase still, but I believe this is a way where, again, this mission that I have in my head, so that we'll be able to diagnose, monitor, and treat patients again at comfort of the home. So very long, but
I'll have to stop you here, but we will come back to both of those ideas. But like we need to give a little bit time to our other speaker, and like everything you said is
no, we can listen to Łukasz because he's talking very interesting things.
Yeah.
Actually,
but like,
sorry for that.
No, but like it's very interesting because it shows like when a specialist with a lot of experience, especially in the medical field, is building a solution about the problems that he knows very much about, and what he said was really important, and gathering that important data is like every solution engineer or IT specialist will say, like, garbage in, garbage out. So like you have to get that valuable data. But what I want to ask you, Agnieszka, is something that a lot of our listeners will probably not have that like years of experience in a medical field or a very like structure or a very regulated field, but each of us has probably some kind of ideas or meet with different problems every day. So if you can tell us a little bit how you think we should approach those ideas, how we should think about it, and how to choose the one that maybe we should work a little bit on.
I would say that there are two paths, depending what is your starting point. Łukasz mentioned one, so there is a problem or need, and he observed it because he is a specialist in a very specific field. But sometimes I've got my own problems I want to solve, and I can't find solutions, or I observe that some of my friends, family, co-workers got some kind of problem, and I want to tackle it and try to solve. This is the first path. And the second one is that sometimes the founders got ideas for the solution or the product before the problem was investigated or the need was investigated. So there are two paths. The first one is, and both of them actually, it would be good if they would focus on three major aspects at the beginning. The first is why. So why I'm doing this? What is my value proposition? Why my solution differentiate from the other solution in the market? So market research, reports, data, as you said, perhaps competitors, major players, rising stars, so the startups from the industry or the specific field. This is the first aspect. The second one is for who I'm doing it. So what is my potential customer and why he or she would buy my solution? So what kind of problem, what kind of need I would like to address? Is it worth solving? So is it urgent? Is it real? Is it painful enough to pay for it? And if I would like to try to solve my problem, for example, I'm not a specialist in cardiology, for example, and I know that I want to solve my own problem. So how many people got same problem as I? So what is like the how big the customer segment is in my country, perhaps abroad? And the third aspect is, do my idea for solution for the product is also the idea for a business? As I said, I'm very into business models. So I think that the business model at the beginning, to validate very roughly the idea, is also the good starting point, because this is just one sheet of paper with 9 crucial building business blocks that help you to think about your idea in terms of, yes, it's on the basis of business model generation book. And it's like, it covers the market and desirability of the product. So the customer segment size, the competitors and other existing solutions, feasibility. Am I able to build the solution? Do I have what kind of resources and activities I have to take to build that product or the solution? And the third one is viability. So is it a good idea in terms of cost and potential revenue streams in my pricing strategy to build a product that can be a foundation of my future business? So I would say that there are 3 starting points. Why, for who, and is this the idea for the product or for the business?
Okay, you mentioned something that will be a good segue to the next question. So, like those 3 steps and the viability. Like, so how do you approach like testing ideas? Do you have any tips that that founders should approach? Whether that's like
I've prepared plenty of books here when it comes to testing, because when it comes to testing, it's all about setting the test strategy and experiment strategy. So why do you want to test? Why do you want to experiment? What do you want to check? What do you want to validate? What are the most risky hypotheses in your business? And there is plenty of ways to experiment. And I would strongly recommend to do it even before the product is built or you start build anything. And there is a book from the same publisher as you've got. It's Testing Business Ideas. For those who never tested before, it's about 44 experiments and testing ideas, how you can check viability, desirability, or feasibility of your product. It also depends, do you have hardware, like Łukasz said, he's building software, or is it B2B or B2C business? So it's good to be aware that, for example, if you're doing customer interviews, it's good at the beginning, because it's like the field of discover the potential nature of the problem, the potential needs that weren't verbalized before, or you didn't no idea that they're existing. But the interviews are not very strong evidence in terms of verifying will they pay for it. You can test it as a next step in the second experiment with a stronger evidence and proof that it's worth to build something on it.
Okay, and going from that, I cannot not ask you, Łukasz. So how did you test and validate your ideas? So how did it start at the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, this is always a challenge in medicine to to validate. And I must tell you that I think we've committed a lot of mistakes, kind of going with a kind of what we think, then checking it out. But generally speaking, building on that, speaking with what we call, those leaders of opinion, we call them key opinion leaders, KOLs, who kind of see a little bit further where that field is moving towards, asking them what they think about the product and would they be using, do they see a space. So what we've done, back 2015, 2016, we put like an advisory panel and board from different countries to discuss the concept itself, whether it makes sense, and then to try out whether it would fit in the healthcare system. Will there be someone who will pay for that? How much will they pay? What are the alternative solutions that we have now on the market, and how we will compete? So try to position that product, because we're also working with patients. So giving those devices or prototypes or even concept on the early phase to patients and checking how would they be using that. Will they cope? It is a completely different story where you give a diagnostic device to someone in the hospital. They are used to use different devices. When you give it to people at home, they have different experiences. I mean, it has to be working like your microwave almost, so that they can operate that. And the next thing, very important. I mean, again, specific for medicine, but one, you have those guys who are leaders in opinion, but then you have those very practical chaps who kind of work with patients on daily basis, those practitioners. And it's very important, I think, to speak with them. I mean, because they might be practicing medicine completely different from what the kind of professors and so on are thinking that the medicine is moving. And that might be actual also for other fields. I mean, if you think, about drivers of sport cars, and then if you have regular drivers like we all are, I mean, we have different expectations from this vehicle. So this is how we did it. Yeah. I don't know if Agnieszka, you will agree that this is the right approach, but
I think that
I'd
the
love
one
to learn
hint,
from you as well.
The one hint I've heard when you were talking is like, when you're defining your customer segment, it is good in terms of especially B2B businesses or B2G when it comes to government, to identify not only the institutions you want to make your customers, but the decision makers as well. So, for example, if I would run the fintech company, I would like to say, okay, my potential customer segments are Polish banks, for example, or UK banks. But the next step is to validate who inside the bank is the person who say, okay, we are buying it. So it was from your speech, I was thinking, okay, it could be good to validate at the beginning that decision makers as well.
Yeah, and the challenge that I see, I completely agree with that. And the challenge is that, the banking system is pretty much this. I mean, I wouldn't say the same, but it's sort of comparable at least. And those decision makers usually, international companies who have similar structure across the globe and stuff. And in our field, what we see that it is very fragmented. You go from Poland to Germany to France, a different person is taking decision on your device, kind of, and you have to figure out, like Italy, like small regions taking decisions. UK is very centralized. US is again fragmented, but again more transparent with how decision is making. So I think it's a very good point, and also you will need money for that because it costs, to do that.
Yeah, and I think that what we can add at the end of that part and the question, that when you are doing medtech, you need to think about regulations as well, local regulations, and this is the part of the homework. So the market reports, market research, competitors research, to the legal and legislation research as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you one thing: this is impossible to learn by a founder on those regulatory things. You can think but really you need to work with good specialists on this part.
Okay. Something that you, Łukasz, mentioned was that leaders of opinion. So every founder will probably will tell that like everyone has a slightly different opinion if they care at all about your idea, and the ideas themselves evolve. So sometimes you are so in love with the idea, but like your tests, your hypothesis do not match your expectations, and you need to pivot or change it slightly. Do you have any tips or strategies how to do it properly, Agnieszka?
I think that what was mentioned in the 10 minutes of our meeting is like test, experiment, and make decision on the basis of the data. So and doing pivots, it's like it's not a failure of the idea. It's like it's the approach that we are testing, because it's better to fail fast and fail often, because we make the data set of different paths for our business, and it's cheaper to, for example, fail after a year or two with existing products, like the product that cost us plenty of money. So I think it's like being open to learn and be curious what's happened. I would say like it's like, from my perspective, doing pivots and changing it's like we know that we want to help, for example, like Łukasz said, we want to help our patients, and there is plenty of ways and paths we can achieve that goal. And pivot is like, okay, the mission is the same, but we experiment which way of doing the business will be the most valuable from user or customer perspective, and will be the most efficient for us as well. So I would say test as often as you can, and as often as the resources, your time and money allow you to make the pace very.
Yeah, what you said about failing often and failing fast is probably one of the most crucial thing I learned at the uni, because there's one resource that you will never get back is the time. So if you're going to spend let's say 9 months on the idea that is not feasible or not viable at that time, maybe it's better to find out this after 2 months, and then have time to like work on another idea. So the time and how quickly you can experiment and get the tangible results is very important here.
I would add one more thing, that building a startup or building any business and validating the idea is not about you. It's not about the founder. It's all about customers or patients, for example, like in Łukasz case as well.
Okay, yeah, and then how was it in your case, Łukasz? Like you mentioned those leaders of opinion. Did they help you redefine the idea a little bit, or did you have to pivot at any point?
Yeah, I mean, my experience is that the key opinion leaders might mislead you, and don't lean on them. You said, Agnieszka, you said data. I mean, the guys who think they are experts it's one data point. The guys who are your customers, so your patients and the thousands of physicians, are another 99% of the data points. I think this is the right balance that you should look at that. So if an expert in the field told you this is a great idea, I would be very skeptic still about it. I mean, it's just one opinion, and even though there is a big title behind it, still go out and test it. And absolutely, I mean, we see that we had ideas on how this solution can be used. It makes absolute sense if you think about it. Speaking with, again, experts, it made it, it should work. But then you go out to the market and you go to those customers, let's say, and it turns out that they are not interested in that, because there are other things that we didn't think about that we're taking into consideration, like what is the business model for them? What's in that solution for them? Did we think and do we address that? So in medicine, everyone is saying, this is about, improving health. But if you think about the people on the way to get to the patient and improve that health, there are many guys who have different interests, and you should consider that as well very much. And the other thing that we didn't discuss, I think, that I see is important, is the timing. So what I saw is that when we started, the market wasn't really ready for our product, frankly speaking. And then the COVID pandemic changed a lot in terms of how we think about remote communication, consuming healthcare, and the aspect of trust to someone you don't have next to you, and the readiness increased. So I don't know if you again agree, Agnieszka, but I think what you test today might be different from what you will test down the 2 years down the road. And the question is, should I cancel my idea or should I just park it and then take something else that is, right now you have the market? I don't know what is your opinion on that. It's very interesting to me.
It is, because it's funny because you said that the readiness of the market, of the patient, changed because of the COVID pandemic. And it's funny because very often when I work with founders, they see being first on the market as super advantage. And I disagree, because it means that you have to spend a lot of money to educate the market.
Yeah.
But when it comes to testing, I would say that it's like continuous improvement, because at the beginning, when you've got the idea, without the product, you want to test the hypothesis of, do I know who is my customer? Do I know how the market looks like? Do I know the problem? And yes, the time doesn't stop. It changes over time. So you have to validate and check what's going on in your business and in your industry, on your market every time. And sometimes, if you are aware that you are before the market when it comes to timing, perhaps it means that you have to put more energy of educating your customer, educating market, or just wait if you're comfortable enough to wait. But I've got a second book. One question, one book. It's about running clean. So how to validate fast, how to learn, how to that continuous learning, testing, and improvement implement into the business. Because when I, for example, create my business model right now, or you created 2 years ago, it can occur that the markets or from things from completely different industry change so much in your market as well that you have to change the business model. Look at the Spotify, Netflix. Netflix changed how HBO, Disney Plus, and other platforms or other VOD platforms are operating right now. So it's not like putting on a rock forever. It's constantly changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this element on the technology around, I remember when we started, the saturation of smartphones in my target group was probably 20 or 30%. So the biggest kind of, when we're fundraising, the question is, how do you want to sell that product if you don't, no one is using smartphones, And yes, that's true. But the time from idea, development of medical device, regulatory, and all of that is so long that just by looking at the projection, how the saturation of smartphones, especially in elderly people, but generally speaking, will go. That was something that what you're saying. We have to look at other technologies that develop at the same time. This is not a static situation. You have many moving balls, and understanding the trajectory of those balls and where you are will tell you will you have a synergy? Will you gain from that change, or maybe that could be an obstacle, and you will wake up in 5 years that something went completely wrong because
or maybe you can find a workaround because of the
you can find exactly, but you have to think about that obstacle for first to find it out. Exactly. So I fully agree on that, and there is a big environmental thing that You have to be looking at. And I think that from my perspective, I'll tell you, this is super difficult to keep track. You have limited number of people in your organization, and who is gonna doing that? Who will be the watch guy? And that obviously influences your plans. You have a budget, you have to, direction to go, and suddenly comes in and bang. I mean, we have to change that. Why? On what data? What should we do? I think this is a challenge. I know how you approach that, but yeah.
Yeah, what you mentioned about that timing is super important, and that will be probably low hanging fruit of examples. But like, how much easier was for every single electric vehicle company after Tesla did all those years of teaching customers about possibilities and all the advantages of having electric vehicle. And now also like the regulators are all on their side, obviously, like in London to the very central of London is hard to go without having an electric car, because you will have to pay additional money every single time you get there. So that how to put it, that the idea of the blue ocean market, where you're the first one, is not always that advantageous, as Agnieszka said. Like, you will spend a lot of
It
time.
can be, but it's expensive.
Yeah. Okay. So a little bit on top of that. So like, you mentioned time frame, but you mentioned the timing of testing, but I will ask you something about the time frame. Do you have any advice how to set up the time, how quickly you should validate your idea, so you will not end up into like, okay, let's do another test, or let's do let's change it a little bit, and maybe that will work better. How what is your approach to that problem, Agnieszka?
I think that time frame depends of the business you are doing, because it's different when it comes to hardware, it's different when it comes to software, when it comes to business and business to consumer, and your ability and the pace you can take. But I would say that if you've got the idea for a solution for a startup, it's better to start with validating what customers need, problems, desirability, and feasibility before even building the product. And for example, if you decide after the interviews, after perhaps some A/B tests with campaigns, landing pages, where you communicate your value proposition, and you decide to build the product, you can, like Łukasz said, he was showing prototypes to patients, different kind of version of the product before the final version came up. And then you've got the field of experiments after launching the product, how to acquire customer, what is the most efficient way, what is the cheapest way, the fastest way. So I would say that running a startup is like, by definition, like, is the venture with the thing that you don't know what is the product, and you don't know who is the customer, and you have to discover on the fly everything. So you the time frame, usually when we work with startups, I don't know, 6 months gave them the first, I would say, strong enough fundamentals to get, okay, I know how I will acquire my customers and what is the value proposition, and I know how to sell it.
Okay. And Łukasz, did you have in mind any time frame, how quickly you wanted to build the prototype, or how quickly you wanted to show something to the patients?
Yeah, I mean, on the building the prototype can be relatively quick. The issue in medicine is that you can show it, but you cannot use it. So it's not like I made a prototype of earphones and I give it to you and you try it. Do you like it or not? Because I cannot give a medical device to a patient and let him try. I have to register it. So this is a tricky part here. So really you have to either you go through the pathway where you do what we call clinical trials. So you ask the bioethic committee if they allow you to test it on your patient before you have a what we call CE mark, medical CE mark, so a certification here in Europe, or you just do the CE mark. And we have taken the CE mark pathway because back then, it's changed now, but back then getting a CE mark was a little bit quicker. So unfortunately, and that's why medicine is so difficult, because you have a big risk that what you invented by then will not fully work. There are ways to circumvent that. There are ways to try but not ready to use. I mean, give it but not ready to use it. Ask for opinion and all of that. But in fact, once you have the product, you will anyways then run trials that confirm the benefit of the product. And here it's not just about if the patient likes it, if he will spend money on that, but here the question is, does it really improve health? And that is done on a very rigorous way. So if you think about testing from the idea with some initial tests, that took us about probably 1.5 years. And then there is the market phase on one side, but also clinical trials on the other side. And that is a long process. So we are talking about years, really. And generally speaking, we in healthcare, we were saying you need about a decade until you have a product that is registered after all the trials. So it's a very long process. But there is a good thing which doesn't exist in other industries, is that if you have an idea, you can file a patent protection, IP protection. So this way, you kind of secure your field for a 10-year period or even longer, depending, where you have time to sort of do your stuff and know that no one will come after, as a Tesla, come after and steal what you've built and copy that. The issue is that this protection sounds long, but the development is also long. So you have just a couple of years where you can really earn on what you've spent. So that's an answer, I think, to some extent on this time frame. It is a long time frame.
I see. We are running out of time, so there will be just a couple last questions. So can you please tell us what is the current status of your companies and what are the next steps? Do you like further raising money or developing new version of the product?
Yeah, sure. So AioCare is available on market. You can go to the website and buy in that different distributors. So we are in the phase now where the company is going through a transition period to ramp up the commercialization. The patch, the Smart Medics patch, is much earlier. The product is more going what Agnieszka spoke about. So we have some approvals already, so we can work with patients. We're working fine tuning the product, and it's basically much earlier phase, looking for partners that would be interesting to test it out, physicians, patients, healthcare organizations. AioCare is very much about now looking for great partners. So this is what we do. Yeah.
Okay, and the very last question for both of you. Obviously, we spent about 45 minutes here, and you shared a lot of knowledge, but I'm pretty sure that our listeners will learn a lot more if they will follow you online. And can you share where they can follow you or where they can learn a little bit more about you? Agnieszka?
I think the best place to find me is this LinkedIn.
Okay, and as you all can see, that there are no Polish letters in your name or or surname, so it will be easy to find. And Łukasz, in your case.
So LinkedIn as well. You can find me also on ResearchGate, which is a scientific sort of network, and I do tweet quite a bit. So Twitter is also a place.
Thank you. Thank you to our listeners, and most of all, thank you for our great speakers. It was great to listen to you. It was great to ask you the questions and learn a lot, and also refresh some knowledge that I completely forgot. So it's always great. This was just the first part of that founder's journey. So please look around, and soon there will be another episode of BizTalk where we will dive a little bit down this rabbit hole and learn a couple other tricks to start your own startup. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.